Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are back this morning to continue debate, to continue voting on amendments to this bipartisan Keystone XL bill. I want to focus on two main subjects today, and I think first is to speak to what I think is the good progress that we've made on this bill, moving us towards ultimately a final vote, final passage. I think we probably surprised a few people yesterday in adopting an amendment on climate change that few people thought would be adopted. We've processed now a total of 9 amendments. Some would say, well, 9's not much, but just to put it into context, last year, in the year 2014, the United States Senate held just 15 roll call votes on amendments. That was in all of 2014, just 15 roll call votes. So that means that just in a couple days here in this new Congress, we're already about 60% of our total from all of last year. Still January here. We've got 8 amendments that are pending at this moment, set to be voted on today. We're going to be working out the timing of that and the order. But my hope is that we're going to exceed last year's total, hopefully, here today. So I think that this is good, and I think that our productivity, and I appreciate the cooperation of the ranking member here on the committee. What we've been able to do with this measure is important, because I think it stands in pretty stark contrast to what we've seen in recent years, and quite honestly to the delays of that the Keystone XL pipeline has faced over these years. So the second part of my comments this morning, I'd like to provide a little bit of perspective about how long this cross-border permit has been pending, awaiting a final decision by the President. Sometimes when we talk just in terms of the raw numbers, it's like, so what does that really mean? What does it mean to be on the 2,316th day that has passed since the company seeking to build this pipeline filed its first permit with the State Department? So it's more than 6 years, it's more than 76 months, it's more than 330 weeks. The President noted in his State of the Union this week that Keystone XL was just a single oil pipeline. And he's right. It is just a single oil pipeline. We've got multiple pipelines that cross border. We have hundreds of pipelines that cross throughout this country here. So it really begs the question, how and why has it taken so long to get just one single pipeline action? Why does it take so long? So there have been a lot of examples that we've heard here on the floor. Somebody has suggested that, well, I had mentioned yesterday that President Obama was still a sitting senator when the permit application was filed. Others have said the iPad hadn't even been out on the market before the first permit was filed. We've heard that 2,300 days is longer than it took the United States to win World War II, longer than Lewis and Clark's expedition to explore the West, longer than Project Mercury, which put the first American into space. So a lot of comparisons out there in terms of what it really means to be longer than 2,300 days. I've mentioned on the floor many times that in Alaska, we're seeking to try to advance our natural gas resource. In order to do so, we need a pipeline. We need a big pipeline to move from the North Slope down to Tidewater, and so we're working to train up welders, because we know that when that day comes and we have the opportunity to be building that line, we're going to want Alaskans to have those jobs. They may be temporary in that you don't weld a pipeline for forever. You do it until the job is complete, but those are good jobs. Those are good jobs for those Alaskans and for people that come up to our state. Fairbanks Pipeline Training Center in Alaska does a fabulous job, probably the best pipeline training facility that I think we have in the country, at least in my opinion. Kids are graduating there once a year, ready to go to work on projects like Keystone XL. We're probably talking about seven sets of welders that have graduated at this point. And we need to be approving projects that can help these young people or those that have been retrained as welders to get jobs. That's what they're waiting for. We could even think about this length of time, again, that has ensued since the first permit application has been pending in terms of flying to Mars and back. We could probably complete about 3 round trips from here to Mars and back 3 times, depending, of course, on the distance of the planets. But again, just kind of putting it in context. If we wanted to stay a little bit closer to home, we could describe those 2,300 days in terms of how many times we could hike the entire Appalachian Trail, probably 10 or 12, depending on the weather. One of these days, I'd like to hike the Appalachian. I don't know that I have time, but again, it's one of those issues when you think, how long has this been pending before this administration? So today I'm going to add just one more example to show, again, the comparison. We're all kind of focused on what's going on with Super Bowl 49 coming up in about 10 days now. So pretty timely base of comparison. We're going to see Super Bowl 49 pit the reigning NFL champions, Seattle Seahawks. Now in Alaska, we don't have our own our professional football, so we kind of adopt the Seahawks. So I will let my colleagues know that I'm standing with the ranking member here in rooting for the Seahawks on the big day next week. Lots of folks that are excited about it, and we'll be watching. Game's going to be played next Sunday, but for the moment, let's look back to September 19th of 2008. This was the day that the cross-border permit for Keystone was first submitted to the State Department. And so let's focus specifically on the Seahawks here because they provide a pretty good example of how much has changed over the past 6 years. Back in September of 2008, the Seahawks were about to start a season in which they would go just 4-12, winning 4 games, losing 12. At that point, they were still a good team. We were still rooting for them, but they were a pretty different team. For starters, the Seahawks had a different head coach. Their current coach, Pete Carroll, was still at the University of Southern California, coaching the Trojans. Their star running back, Marshawn Lynch, was about to start his 2nd year in the NFL as a member of the Buffalo Bills. It would be another 2 years before Lynch joined the Seahawks, and just over 3 years before the nation discovered his love of Skittles during the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. The most famous members of the Seahawks secondary, the Legend of Boom, of course, are Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas. And back in September of 2008, both were still in college, respectively playing for Stanford and University of Texas. And of course, you can't forget Russell Wilson. A lot of Alaskans are rooting for him to get a 2nd consecutive Super Bowl as the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. But back in September of 2008, he had played just a handful of college games at that time. He was a redshirt freshman at North Carolina State. My point here, Mr. President, not in talking about football, although that's what a lot of us are talking about, is that a lot can happen over the course of 2,300 days. And it does, whether we're talking about what goes on in politics, in world events, or the world of sports. And so I would suggest to you that it should probably take the federal government less time to approve an important infrastructure project, what the president himself has called just a single oil pipeline, than it takes to build an NFL championship team. So I would like us to get to that point where we can be done here on the floor with discussing the merits of this important project, be done in the sense that we can move forward with not only Keystone XL, but move forward as a nation when it comes to North American energy independence, when it comes to providing for jobs and greater economic benefit to this country. I am pleased with the process that we've had on the floor here over the past couple days. I look forward to the series of amendments that we will have votes on this afternoon, likely after lunch, and the opportunity to be in further discussion about these issues that I think have been pent up for a period of time. And with that, I will acknowledge my colleague on the Energy Committee and co-fan of the Seattle Seahawks.